to Travel Agency in a Year. Oh, dang it, I left my drink. It's fine. So, this is Rachel. Welcome. We are on day 2 of Travel Agency in a Year. Day 1 was more focused on new agents trying to figure out their business plan. Day 2 is the annual review. You should always be reviewing. There is, her name is Mary Beth Lynn, by the way. I think she's even trademarked the phrase review, not do. But that's a completely different thing I'm talking about. But you should always be tracking all of your metrics, financials, conversions, how efficient your systems are working, and tweak. At a minimum, on an annual basis, I do highly recommend on a quarterly basis. I don't recommend every single week being like, I gotta do this, I gotta do that, because then you're never gonna get anything actually done to serve clients. Like if you're like, I gotta get this new system, or I gotta transfer everything to a new CRM, and now there's this new CRM, and whatever new shiny objects are. Not a fan of going after all of that constantly. So what is an annual business review? Great question. I think I'm going to be doing that a lot in this. Great question, Rachel. Just talk to yourself. um, you have to have all the information, your gross revenues, all of your expenses, what kind of expenses they are. If you don't have a solid bookkeeping system, it's going to take you a minute. You also need to understand how long it takes for you to serve a client from the moment of consultation through travel, and see if there's any way you can make that more efficient or automate anything. And sometimes host agencies will have CRMs that you have access to that you can use, but maybe you haven't set up the automations in there. So that's something you can factor. A really important one to help you set your goals is your marketing metrics. What does that mean, Rachel? Tell me more. It is basically every social media platform and whatever system you use to send out your email newsletter, which I do recommend. The email newsletter is super duper important. I'll get into that later. But they all show you essentially what your conversion rate is. And there's the engagement rate, which is like likes, follows, comments, shares. Those are all considered forms of engagement. Views, the length of views on your content. You should be monitoring this regularly. If you haven't been, that's fine. You should be able to go into your analytics console on your social media accounts and get the data. And that's going to help you understand what your conversion rate is, and therefore help you set your goal for next year. I'm going to go further into this than anything else, because you do whatever you want with your money. You should be making a profit after you pay yourself and all of your expenses. You should be setting aside an oopsie fund, because we all make mistakes. You should be budgeting properly. However, everyone has different business goals, so I'm not going to get into that so much right now. You're also going to review what your biggest successes and your biggest failures were. A success could be qualitative or quantitative information. So qualitative is like how you feel about it, and quantitative is like real number data that you can use. Examples of successes could be, perhaps you're more of a generalist right now and you're trying to figure out what you want to niche into. And maybe over the course of this last year, you got a client that you served for a trip that was in a niche that you never expected you would enjoy. And you're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to go all in on this. That could be considered like a success. That's like a qualitative success. Or you implemented some new services, elevated your services, whatever the case is, and you're getting better feedback from your clients. That is another type of success. Another success is like meeting or beating your revenue goals. And even if you've been in it for a while, there's a chance that you never set a revenue goal. You just be like, well, it'd be kind of nice if I made this money, but you didn't actually set it as a goal. It is very important to have this data, and it's very important to set goals. Think of this back to the beginning of this episode. Think of it as like a weight loss plan or you want to be able to run a marathon. You can't just be like, I want to run a marathon and have zero training program and have zero idea of how well you can do it today versus when you do run the marathon. Conversely, if you want to lose weight, you can't just be like, I want to lose weight without having an idea of what a healthy weight is for your body type and your frame, without a regimen that you know you can safely implement without injury, and a diet-ish plan to follow. Same thing with your business. You want to have all the information possible, and it's ugly and scary, just like when you get your waist measurement and you're like, dear God, what's happened to me? Or you do a step test and you're like, why am I so out of shape? You're gonna see the same thing with your first annual business review. All of my Success Circle students, this is the first thing I drop, and it's the worst part of it. But get it out of the way. It's important to have all that information. Now, why is it important to have this information? Let's say you made $50,000 in gross revenues, and yeah, that looks cool on paper, but back to yesterday's episode with the business plan. If you went to a bank and you're like, I need a loan for $100,000, no big deal, I make $50,000. Most reputable, not gonna rip you off in fees banks will look at all of your expenses too and be like, you don't manage your money very well. No, you're not gonna be able to pay this loan back because you don't manage your money. So you need to look at your gross revenues and your gross expenses and what categories do these expenses fall into. I think I already mentioned this earlier, but if you don't track this somewhere in like QuickBooks or similar, it's going to take you a while to put this together, and I'm sorry, but it's important because it is a big eye-opener, especially if you're like, yeah, I did make $50,000, but my business account, I know off the top of my head, my general expenses are only like $3,000 a year, but my business account balance is like $2,000. Like, what are you spending the other money on? So, and is it viable? Like, is it super important for you to operate your business? It also helps you project and forecast your budget for the next year. It also helps you forecast, along with your marketing metrics, your revenues for the next year. So if you did 50 this year, let's say, you could reasonably say I could make 75, maybe even 100. Who knows? Who knows? Who knows what's happening next year? But is that gonna be all spent? Is it gonna be blown on fam trips, or is it gonna be blown on the next great thing? I don't know. I don't know. Another thing that you need to factor in when you're setting your goals is your marketing conversion rate. We're going to get into that in a minute. So we're discussing finances. We've discussed the successes. Let's talk about the failures. What were the 3 biggest mistakes you made last year? Was it taking on a client just because they were willing to pay the fee and they ended up being a nightmare, or just taking on a client because you wanted to be the have the business because you kind of had a scarcity mindset, maybe? Was it you decided that you're just going to sell whatever people want, book whatever, and not specialize, and so then you were running yourself ragged trying to know about every resort or cruise line or destination that anyone asked about, instead of being highly specialized and niche down? I've been advocating for years to niche down. I have a course called Finding Your Sweet Spot to Success / The Sweet Spot to Success. It is a quick 5-day course. It is $47, and it helps you figure out what niche or niches you should specialize in based on your interests, the type of people you like to work with, your knowledge, and your specific superpowers. We also go into creating service packages. Should you decide to implement fees, you should have above and beyond services. And you should recommend, have it in tiered packages offerings. It's a really good model that's worked for my travel agency. So if you need help with figuring out your niche, $47, about 5-6 hours of your life could really help you figure this out. Now, back to the marketing conversion. All right, let's say you booked, I'm going to go real low here, but I know this isn't uncommon with like agents who have only been in it for like 2 years and kind of struggling with their marketing strategies. Let's say you booked 7 trips and you had 10 consultations. That means your conversion rate is 70%. 70% of the people who talk to you at this point in time want to work with you. So you can use that to help you with your revenue. You're also going to have, back to the financials, the average commission earned, right? So let's say your average commission was $1,000, because I like to keep numbers simple, and you made $50,000 somehow. Nope, backtrack. We're going to keep the 7. You had 7 trips, so you brought in $7,000 in gross revenues. Your goal next year is to make $28,000, which means you need to book 28 trips, right? If your average commission is $1,000. And if you have 28 trips, you need 4 times as many consultations for that 70% conversion rate, which means instead of 10 consultations, you will need 40. Now, working backwards from there, what is your marketing strategy? Are they all coming from email? Are they all coming from specific social media platforms? Are they coming from networking events and local interaction? Where is it coming from? You need to expose yourself on that platform or expand to maybe one additional platform to get the 4x return. Like, you've got to expose yourself 4x to get the 4x consultation. A good book to read if you're like, wait a minute, this is just math. Denise Duffield Thomas has a book called Chillpreneur, and she breaks it down real simple too. She does some kind of coaching stuff. I don't know. But her book is fabulous and helps ease people who are afraid to market online, because she's like, it's literally for every 1,000 interactions of some sort, you're going to get 1 sale. I think that's what it breaks down to. So 1,000 views, combination of views, follows, shares, comments should get you 1 closed sale. And if you have a 70% conversion rate, you're looking at 2 consultations. So that is another way to look at it. And you have to have all this information so that you can make decisions on how your business is going to look for the next 12 months. And if you set your goal from 7,000 to 100,000, you're going to have to freaking work, okay? It's not going to come easy. So then, based on that and your goals, how long does it take you to serve a trip right now, and how much time do you even have available? Maybe you work a full-time job and you want to transition to doing travel full-time. Then you need to take a look at your conversion rate and how much more you're going to have to do for your marketing, which we'll get into marketing strategies in future episodes. Let's take it real simple, folks. Don't do it all at once, because then you won't get it all done. But if you take all that information and you know it takes you 15 or 20 hours to maybe even 30 hours to serve 1 trip from start to finish, what can you do in your operations, which is the software, the automations, the email, the general emails that you do? Are your consultations too long? How do you run the actual business? What can you do there to be more efficient and implement for next year? And this could be, maybe you'll have to buy some templates related to a niche. Again, you could look at your operations and be like, it takes me so long to do a trip because I book everything for everyone and I'm not highly specialized. So you might want to make the decision to niche down, which I highly, 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 highly recommend and have been advocating for years to people. Don't do everything. So if you want to niche down, I do like to keep it no more than 3 niches. If you're completely revamping your business, This is kind of like a big science experiment, and you're testing your hypothesis of I think African safaris are going to explode in 2026 and 2027 travel. I've got this great DMC that I can work with. I've done training on this destination. I've found I really enjoy this destination. Stick with just promoting the safaris. If you're kind of like, but I also like AI resorts in Mexico, you could keep that around, but your marketing strategy is going to differ from one ideal client avatar to the next. You can't have like all this content going towards higher tickets, spending, like higher ticket clientele for African safaris, and then have a random, let's just say you're on Instagram Reels or Instagram, whatever, have a random reel that's like, book a Tillier, because it's not as high of a ticket, right? So consider all of that. If you do want to niche down and you're brand new to highly specializing, I would recommend starting with one, either destination or type of travel, and becoming the expert in that destination or type of travel. Don't worry about anything else. Also, you're going to get so much time back low key, because you're not going to be like, I have to join all these webinars about stuff you don't even sell. Like, no, you don't. You don't have to watch the recording. You don't have to take all the trainings. Like, keep it simple. Kiss your business. Keep it simple, silly. I'm not going to insult anyone here. Okay, so once you've gathered all of that information, your successes, your failures, your revenue, your spending, your marketing, your conversion rate with your marketing, in the success circle, I go like deep dive of like what metrics you should be looking for specifically with email marketing, because there are open rates and click-through rates that you need to factor in. And also, if you do video content, you can see when people fall off in your content. So if your video content is not converting, you can see where they fall off, and you can determine if it's the hook, if it's the meat of the post, or if it's the call to action at the end, because every piece of content's got to have that. All right, that's a long bit of everything. Once you have all this information, you should be able to make informed decisions on how you want your business to look and what is going to work for your business. Stay tuned. Come back for tomorrow. All right, bye.